After 15 years of trying to be the love and support he needed, my husband pulled the rug out from under me. "You're just a privileged princess," he sneered as I collapsed from exhaustion and illness. Now, living together as strangers, he wants to leave me behind while I fight to reclaim my worth. How did I become the enemy in our love story? I will attempt to summarize 15 years of history as concisely as possible. My apologies for the length, so much has happened, and I am quite confused about how to manage everything. I was 17 when I met my husband. He was my first love and boyfriend, although I did not hold that title for him. He was also 17 and had moved out of his mother's house to live independently due to significant trauma in his childhood. When we met, he was in the midst of a harrowing legal ordeal, testifying against his abuser. At that time, it had been too long since the incidents occurred, and there was insufficient evidence, so the perpetrator faced no consequences, which has haunted my husband ever since. I felt immense compassion for him and did everything I could to support him. When he suggested that I move out of my home so we could rent together, I thought it was a reasonable request, believing I could help him navigate his difficult times and that we could build a wonderful life together. Looking back, I realize how naive I was. I truly believed that loving him with all my heart would be sufficient. Things were challenging, however. He did not experience much love or stability at home, and while he appreciated what I offered, it felt foreign to him. It became clear that I was a peace seeker, wanting to find ways for us to feel content and happy with what we had, even if it was not much and regardless of his imperfections. He, on the other hand, was caught in a cycle of bitterness, and initially I was his ally in this struggle. He often lamented how society treated men poorly, how people were generally unkind to one another, and how no one would allow him to show the person he truly was. I accepted it all, feeling he was a misunderstood boy who merely needed some opportunities to thrive, but the negative habits stemming from his trauma interfered. The strain of transitioning from a stable and quiet home to being with someone who was emotionally unstable became more than I recognized at the time. Juggling his emotional needs, maintaining the apartment, working full-time, and completing high school eventually began to overwhelm me. I became seriously ill, and for a couple of years we were at a loss regarding the cause. I would vomit everything I ingested, and my weight plummeted to 80 pounds from my usual 125. I was fighting to survive, working when I could, reassuring him about my health and our lives, while searching for the true cause of my illness. It took a long time to discover that I had celiac disease, and even longer to manage my diet and understand cross-contamination risks to regain some semblance of normalcy. Throughout this process, he often expressed anger at me for the challenges life presented or for things I had or had not done, worrying that I would leave him while discussing suicide and lamenting how hard his life was. Even as I faced hurtful situations, I kept returning because I was raised to be compassionate and continually set my own hurts aside to support him. I believed that the disparities in our upbringings demanded that I shoulder some of his burdens to help him discover himself and attain peace. I worked tirelessly to improve my health and tried to work as much as possible, taking only a few years off during the worst periods. At one point, I experienced a form of agoraphobia, fearing gluten exposures and the damage they would cause, but I sought therapy and managed to gain better control over my situation. Through therapy, I also learned to establish healthier boundaries to create the space I needed for recovery. Once I regained some stability, my grandfather passed away, and my grandmother offered to use my inheritance to fund my college education, which I had aspired to before I fell ill. I enrolled in a software engineering program, hoping for a stable career that I could pursue even with the challenges posed by my celiac disease. I wanted to improve our financial situation and support my husband through college so he could also have opportunities. The difficulty arose as over time my husband's resentment toward me escalated alongside our ongoing struggles. While I was unwell, he had difficulty maintaining jobs due to frequent conflicts with staff or supervisors, leading him to quit or be fired repeatedly. I worked as much as I could during my illness and attempted to assist him with his emotional state during that period, but it slowed my recovery efforts as I tried to keep us above water. Eventually, my parents began to intervene, providing over $25,000 over the years to help us. Each time I pleaded with them to empathize with his traumas as the root of his negative attitude toward everyone. I implored our friends to forgive him when he offended others by disregarding their feelings in pursuit of his own sense of justice. I aimed to maintain peace so he could receive the support he frequently complained he lacked, even as he lashed out at those around him. I also started requesting that he become more responsible with household chores and finances, as a major issue in our relationship was his impulsive spending on small items that quickly accumulated to hundreds of dollars each week on fast food, coffee, marijuana, and entertainment toys that entertained him for a week or two at most. Meanwhile, he would criticize the cost of my medication and gluten-free foods, claiming they prevented him from having money to invest in himself. We had the financial means available, but I couldn't effectively allocate funds where they needed to be before they disappeared. My only three complaints were assistance around the house, establishing a fun budget each week, and being more considerate of people's boundaries during social interactions. For him, though, this was far more complex. Seemingly insignificant issues and mistakes became evidence of much deeper feelings. He began to convince himself that I did not care about him, labeling me a privileged princess who could not possibly comprehend how terrible society was to him. He insisted I was too self-centered for the boundaries I had begun to establish in an effort to cope with our codependency. No matter how often I tried to highlight what I was capable of doing, he would counter that those were incomparable to his needs. However, what he required seemed to shift constantly, influenced by circumstances. I am not very quick on my feet, but he wanted to see me take immediate action. I struggle with poor memory, yet he expected me to recall things he mentioned during casual conversations. I have inherent flaws, as does every human, and I never claimed otherwise. All I ever asked was for him to work with me, whether that meant taking notes or supporting me in real time with his requests. But he believed he had already done enough and was unwilling to do anything more for me. He wanted me to confront everyone in our lives regarding causes he deemed just, even if it meant isolating me because he believed he should suffice. Over time, every aspect of me became intolerable to him. He expressed disdain and disappointment in countless areas. I tried to maintain my usual endless empathy, but I found myself increasingly irritated by the impossible standards he imposed, while demanding our loved ones accommodate his behavior without judgment. When I began college, everything started to disintegrate. The first year was filled with suicide threats. Within the initial months, he attempted suicide multiple times, including once during an argument about him receiving appropriate help. I typically maintain high grades, but I struggled to keep my academic performance up while managing the emotional turmoil of trying to keep him alive and stabilize our relationship. Much of the debt I owed my parents stemmed from this time, as they provided financial support for rent and bills while he took a year off. He would resent me for worry over expenses, convinced in his mind that I had burdened him long enough during my illness. He exaggerated the duration of my absence from work and insisted that he deserved the same time off. Eventually, I was able to persuade him to reconnect with his family. Together, we encouraged him to return to work, and he ultimately secured a great job as a security guard at a library. This position was significantly more peaceful and manageable than his previous construction job, and people treated him with more kindness when he presented himself in less aggressive attire. He loved the positive attention, but it further fueled the negative feelings he harbored toward me. These feelings intensified during my second year of college, which proved much more challenging than the first. I struggled to keep up with coursework, having never studied programming prior, but he insisted that our relationship issues could not wait. He felt that even amid the challenges of college, I had responsibilities to him as a partner that I had failed to fulfill. Exhausted and at my wit's end, I could not be the supportive partner I usually was. I needed support myself, but he had gone on strike. He expressed frustration over having to prepare meals, wash dishes, or manage chores, despite my having handled those responsibilities solo for years. He resented being on the sidelines while everyone treated me as the main event. He disliked that our friends would frequently reach out to me for coordinating group activities or that they felt more comfortable discussing their feelings about him with me. He wanted people to confront him directly and, if necessary, engage in disputes. For him, arguing was healthy, but most others weren't aware of his limits and did not wish to expend the energy on conflicts as he did. Therefore, people often defaulted to appeasement to enjoy his company. He consistently voiced his grievances about everything he disliked about me, my family, our friends, and many people he encountered. The only individuals he tended to appreciate were newcomers who were unaware of or did not perceive his more aggressive tendencies. He would put on a facade of pleasantries as long as he could until he slipped, at which point those individuals would distance themselves from him or increasingly rely on me, while he grew frustrated that society was so judgmental toward men. By the end of my second academic year, we attended a cohort party to celebrate the completion of the year for some individuals, while others like me would continue for another year. I brought my husband with the hope of bonding and allowing him to get acquainted with my college friends while sharing stories. However, upon our arrival, he quickly became distant. I spent the evening searching for him, as he drank heavily and socialized without including me. I made 3 separate attempts to reconnect with him, but each time he walked away. By the evening's end, as people began to leave for home, I was eager to go as well since I still had another exam to study for and was already heartbroken. He boasted about consuming 17 to 19 drinks and expressed a desire to attend an after-party, disappearing to the restroom for an extended period while we all waited in the hallway. Eventually, he emerged, only to refuse to leave and proceeded to vomit again, all while arguing with others that he was not drunk and attempting to engage in conversations. My classmates cast sympathetic and shocked glances at me, astonished that this was the person I had been advocating for over the past few years. I ended up taking a cab we could not afford, and he vomited one last time in the elevator on our way. Once we arrived at the apartment, I had to utilize our grocery wagon to pull him inside. I stayed awake to ensure he did not asphyxiate and eventually collapsed when he appeared stable. The following day I was upset, but when he noticed my state and I explained, his response was, "Now you know how I feel," as though I deserved the treatment he had inflicted on me. I was devastated, but I didn't have time to address the major issues he was raising, as I needed to focus on my final, crucial exam that would determine whether I would receive credit, which would be nearly impossible to retake due to the evolving nature of my program. I went to my brother's place until I completed the exam, only to fall very ill afterward, suspecting it might be COVID-19, struggling to breathe or speak for an entire week. Eventually, one evening I sat down with him, hoping we could begin communicating again and focus on his needs throughout the summer to address the downward spiral he had entered during my last semester. However, he insisted that I move back in with my parents for 4 months, during which he would consider my actions regarding whether we would continue as a couple. He claimed his intention was to have me return for my final year of college, but he did not communicate that clearly and had also begun taking steps towards separation, such as opening a separate bank account. When I confronted him about the debt I had incurred in his name to my parents, he replied that he owed neither me nor my family anything. He failed to remember that my parents had to co-sign as tenants for our apartment, and they were understandably furious with how he treated both me and them after their numerous efforts to support him in the past. They informed me that I would remain in the apartment for my final year of college, and he would have to move out, prohibited from taking any of the items they had gifted us, which consisted of nearly all our furniture and appliances. Consequently, he had to start over. He was displeased and accused me of escalating matters beyond his expectations and giving up on him. I reminded him that opening a new bank account behind my back and discussing mediators did not present a strong case for reconciliation. However, he refuses to relent and insists he needs space for me to find happiness, with or without me. He expresses a desire for us to attend therapy together, yet he remains uncertain about whether it is worthwhile or whether he wants to continue our relationship. I find myself in an unfamiliar emotional state. I had never dated anyone prior to him, and I spent my time with him trying to quell his emotional demons, only to gradually become the source of his problems and the baggage he feels he must rid himself of. I genuinely wanted to give everything I had and could be to him, hoping we could build a future together, even if it meant occasionally sacrificing for him or supporting him through challenges I found manageable, but he did not. I sought to provide him space to be human with all his flaws and ups and downs. Yet I was not enough for him. I could not meet his needs, and the things I could offer seemingly held no value to him. Over time, I transitioned from being someone he claimed he could not live without to someone he desired to live without. I repeatedly find myself spiraling into self-doubt. Am I truly such an intolerable person? Am I such a failure as a partner that he could say such hurtful things or abandon me in this manner? I cannot comprehend how he expects me to continue loving him while simultaneously allowing him to take a break and possibly return if he feels like it. I wonder if his new job has made him feel that I am no longer useful to him. I used to be his source of love and stability when he was struggling with his mother, but now that he has reconnected with them and things are improving, I am the remaining problem in his life. Without me, he could eat freely, have no debts, and avoid addressing the consequences of his past actions. He could enjoy the freedom to pursue his desires while treating me merely as a footnote in his history. I feel as if I have given everything only to be left feeling worthless and unlovable. My family and friends assure me otherwise, but it is challenging to recognize that truth when all I hear are the criticisms he has voiced about what he finds unsatisfactory in me, how he believes my future career is nothing but promises of fairy dust, and that I will always be a burden. I wanted to fight for him, yet he seemingly decided long ago that I was the enemy. Nevertheless, he continues to state that 15 years is too significant to give up on, and that I am a kind and loving person he does not want to abandon, even as he begins to do so. We are obligated to live together until June, after which he intends to move out. Each day, I find myself contemplating how to prove my worth versus the hurt and anger stemming from how he has treated me and continues to treat me. We attempt to share occasional hugs and maintain a superficial peace like roommates, but any attempt to discuss our feelings devolves into arguments, where he lists everything I have done wrong while I plead for even a semblance of space to work on things instead of his desire to give up on me entirely. I feel like a fool for having believed so wholeheartedly in the notion that love is all you need, and for failing to meet the demands imposed upon me. I am trying to apply for summer jobs as I initially planned, but whenever I contemplate trying to convince an employer why they should hire me, I become ensnared in a spiral of inadequacy and disappointment about letting down the very person I work the hardest for. I struggle to maintain anger for long. I quickly burn out from empathizing with the opposing viewpoint, and I am continually consumed by thoughts of what I might have done differently or whether I was always someone he would ultimately discard for not being able to meet his expectations. I apologize for the lengthy post. I suppose the summary of it all is this: how do I regain my sense of self-worth? Should I fight to show him that repairing relationships with others is possible if he respects their boundaries a bit more, or to prove that my future is indeed achievable and that I am not the leech he exaggerates me to be in his mind? Is it possible to guide a loved one out of such a deep pit of resentment? When he claims he wants to work things out, should I believe him, or is he simply seeking to alleviate his own stress as he exits toward a brighter future without me? I know many will suggest that it is time to let go, but I do not know how to do that, especially after investing so much of myself in the hope that we could understand each other and grow old together. I am also unsure if I am accurately representing his feelings in my post, making it difficult to act solely on internet advice while attempting to trust him after all these years. He was everything to me, and I do not know how to piece together the fragments he has left behind in order to function. I must repay my parents. I cannot let those who depend on my typically cheerful demeanor down. I need to maintain a facade just enough to navigate through what I must. However, every time I begin to envision my life without him, I become engulfed in confusion and emotions regarding what is happening and why I am being treated in such a hurtful way. I try to engage in my hobbies and interests, yet my mind keeps returning to him, and it has been this way for weeks. I cannot continue in this manner. However, I have no experience in making any significant progress. I attempted to arrange therapy, but it is taking some time. I appreciate any words of kindness or even the more brutal perspective, as I feel utterly lost in overthinking and could benefit from external opinions. Story 2. My husband tried to break me long before I found out I was pregnant with his child. It was just a mistake, I told myself, but then came the bruises and broken trust. You're nothing without me, he'd say. Now I'm fighting to reclaim my life from the ashes of our shattered marriage. What will happen next? Hello, everyone. I do not really have anyone in my life to whom I can open up, so I am writing this here, hoping someone will read it and perhaps understand. This is a part of my story, raw, personal, and painful. I am not seeking pity, just maybe some advice, a kind word, or even simply to feel like I am not invisible. My story is not a fairy tale, it is real life. Sometimes everything that appears bright and true can collapse in a single moment, and putting yourself back together is akin to gathering shattered glass. You cut yourself, you cry, but you continue moving forward. We have now been together for 4 years. We have 2 beautiful children. My son is 5 and our daughter is almost 1. My son is from another man, a man who never saw him and for us may as well be dead. However, my husband accepted him as his own. Before our daughter was born, he was a caring father to my son, and we both desired a little girl. I believed our family was real, but he broke me even before I discovered I was pregnant. Everything fell apart in one day. I found photos on his phone, pictures of my friends. The things he did with them made it feel as though I could not breathe. The ground vanished beneath me, and then the test 2 lines. I was pregnant with his child. I chose to keep the baby, to forgive. I convinced myself it was an error, that he realized what he had done, that it would not happen again. But it did. Throughout my 9-month pregnancy, he kept repeating the same behaviors. I tried to stay for the children, for the family. He promised to change, to fix everything. I held on. When our daughter was 1 month old, I left. I could not endure it any longer. I chose not to suffer in silence. I chose myself. But I could not last long alone with the children. No job, no place to live, 2 children, alone, I could not manage. I returned not out of love but out of fear, out of desperation. This is part of my truth, not perfect, not easy, but mine. When I returned, he was physically present, but in reality I was still alone. Inside me, I clung to the memory of the man who once made me feel safe. I tried to forget, to erase what he had done, to wash his cruelty from my heart, but time it is a stubborn force. It fades even the brightest emotions when they are not reciprocated. I became accustomed to it. I stayed, trapped by circumstance. I no longer felt anything for him. He was still at work most of the time, but even when he was home, I felt like a stranger. His flirting with a coworker, he dismissed it with jokes. She is ugly, I do not want anything from her. But I remembered, he had said the same things about my friends, and then I found their photos on his phone. I could not trust a single word anymore. Day by day, I drifted further away. His touch repulsed me. It was physically unpleasant when he touched my hand or tried to kiss me. It was no longer about love. It was about surviving in a house where I slept next to the man who had destroyed me. But it went even deeper, even darker. During my pregnancy, he hit me, pulled my hair, punched my face, grabbed me violently and choked me. In those moments, I did not feel human. I was a target, a living shield, and no one knew what I was enduring in that home. In my eyes, he ceased being a man. He became a monster, someone who destroyed me mentally and physically, someone who crushed everything good we ever had. And the most bitter part, after all this, we baptized our daughter and even got married in church. We stood in white under the crown, as if trying to piece together a shattered cup, as if giving meaning to something that had already lost its soul. The wedding day began seemingly well. People smiled and wished us happiness. I stood at the altar in white with tears in my eyes. Everyone asked why I was crying. I said, from happiness. But it was not joy on my face. It was grief, the kind I had long learned to conceal behind a half-smile. After the church, we went to greet the guests. Everything seemed festive except for one thing: his mother. She has always meddled in everything, even in the kitchen, checking if everything was up to her standards. When they cut the cake, she snatched the knife from the waiters. This is how you do it, not like that. And my husband stayed silent. As always, you could not say a word about her, not even the slightest criticism. Her word was law, even when she humiliated others. This is the same woman who, a week earlier, had kicked us out of the apartment she had supposedly gifted to us. We lived there while she and my father-in-law resided in their house. Then she decided to move in with us for a month. She came home drunk, tracked dirt all over the clean floor. I could not allow someone like that near my children. When she sobered up the following day, she texted my husband, "Get out of my apartment." The reason: our child had touched one of her figurines from the cabinet. We did not even notice at first. He had simply opened a box, looked at it, and put it back in just a different order. He did not break or damage anything, just a child's curiosity. Yes, I understand those were her personal possessions, but for heaven's sake, he did not ruin anything. And another reason: I did not mop the floor. But I did. She just walked on it drunk in dirty shoes. We had to move in with my parents. A tiny two-room apartment where my sister also lived with her child. We squeezed in however we could. My parents even slept on the floor just so the children could have a bed. My parents, they were the ones who truly showed care. They bought us an old apartment, no renovations. We started from scratch, slowly, step by step. Then my father-in-law promised to help us and my parents with money for repairs, but throughout that time, not a single cent. We went into debt just to ensure our children had a place to sleep. Yes, I understand, no one owes us anything, but then why promise? Returning to the christening evening, I carried our daughter in my arms all night. Almost no one helped except my mother. My husband, smoking, sitting with his parents. I felt invisible. He danced with everyone except me. We never even had a real wedding. This was my one chance to feel needed, loved, but he did not even come near, did not hold my hand, did not ask me to dance. That night I knew for certain, I am alone. With my children in my arms, pain in my heart, in a family that felt more like a silent scream than a home. I chose to endure, not because I forgave him, but because I needed time to get on my feet, to find strength, to build at least some kind of stability for me and my children. We acquired our own home, old, full of debt, needing repairs, but it was ours. Behind those walls, I felt a little bit of freedom, that this space was mine, ours. I felt nothing for him anymore, and he felt it. Only then did he begin to change, acting like a husband, pretending to care, but I knew it was a facade. Inside, he was still the same man. He sensed I might leave, and those changes were not love, they were fear, fear of losing control. Sometimes he still displayed the same cruelty, still raised his hand. Eventually, I began to suffocate next to him. It was like being trapped in a cage with no light or air. Everything became unbearable: his control, suspicions, phone checks, interrogations. Where were you? With whom? Why did you not answer? I could not endure it any longer. I suggested an open relationship, but with a clear boundary: no physical intimacy. For me, it meant a chance to breathe, to simply be myself, to have coffee with someone, to talk, to feel like a human being again, not someone's possession. We were both exhausted. I yearned for peace, even if only on the surface. He silently agreed. He understood I was on the edge. But until my marital status officially changed, I never crossed that line. Not because he deserved it, but because I respected myself. That is when I met someone else. Let's call him K. We merely talked. He knew I had a family, knew I was struggling. He never pressured me, he was just present. A random accident brought us closer. He crashed into my car. Technically, it was my fault. But he, like a real man, took responsibility, paid for repairs, and something shifted. We began to converse more, laughing, sharing. For the first time in a long while, I felt heard, respected. He became my safe harbor, not a lover, a friend. I did not see a man I wanted to be with. I saw a shoulder I could lean on. His calmness and willingness to listen, it was everything I had been missing. He did not just see a mother, he saw a woman, a person. He helped me, helped my mother. He was there when it mattered most. He was like a life raft. Now regarding my parents, I finally gathered the courage to tell them everything. With tears and trembling hands, I revealed what my husband had done, how he hit me, how he humiliated me, how he destroyed me. And they said, "Endure, this is your choice. You had children with him, so live with him." My parents always claimed they would not let anyone hurt me, that they would always stand by my side. But when the pain became real, they turned away. My father said, "I was a fool in my youth too, but I changed, and so will he." They did not want to hear my truth. They wanted us to reconcile, to pretend nothing had happened, to move on as if it were all a dream. My father even threatened my husband. "If you touch her again, I swear," but those threats meant nothing. They did not deter him. And then I knew I had no support from anyone, anywhere. I was utterly alone. But even in that silence, that loneliness, I began to build my strength. Not in spite of it, but because of everything I survived. To be continued. Story 3. I'm 35 and drowning in despair, screaming, "I am a failure." I long for acceptance but destroy every connection. Stripped of dreams and burdened by family debt, I fear abandonment yet crave servitude. I just want to run away, but my cage feels inescapable. How did I end up here? I consider myself a failure. I will never amount to anything. I am already old, yet I do not possess a suitable job, a genuine career, a future plan, or a relationship. Aspirations, hope, just resignation to a meager fate and existence, which is, truthfully, what I deserve. I am not intelligent, I am not hardworking, motivated, or interesting. I am mean, bossy, aggressive, irresponsible, and difficult to deal with. I want things done for me, and I prefer to do whatever I want to do, activities that are easy and simple. I am lazy and seldom care about anything other than my own self-interests. It is always about me, me, me. There is never consideration of what has happened to me that could uplift me, nor what I could do to change and improve. Of course not, I am a coward. I loathe being perceived, I despise being looked at and asked questions, and I detest ever having to take on the leadership role. I long to live in the shadows, yet I have this aching desire for acceptance from someone. I find myself begging, hungry, desperate, crawling in darkness and on the ground. I yearn for someone to accept me in all the aspects of myself that do not function, so that I can learn to accept myself. I cannot manage on my own, I am too sad and too lonely. I need someone to rely on, someone on whom I can cry, to tend to my wounds with me. I will never become who I want to be. It is easier to succumb to despair. It is more comfortable to lie in bed all day dissociating from my feelings, doing things like writing this self-pitying, pathetic letter, believe it. It requires power, strength, resilience, discipline, and self-love and worth to demonstrate that you can be better than what you currently are. To decide that difficult, grueling, achingly painful self-improvement is and will be worth it one day for yourself. It is hard to believe that I even deserve peace or happiness. I feel as though this suffering is my punishment for being the unattractive person I am. I am so weak, I am so alone, I feel fundamentally broken, unlovable, unloving. I wish to destroy others and have them remain destroyed to prove that my existence within their souls is eternal. Focus only on me. Think solely of me. Never let me go. You cannot let me go. Cry and scream and break for me. Burn for me. Prove that I am worth and deserving of the greatest anguish they have felt, because to be without me in their thoughts is even more painful. To me, that is my twisted definition of loyalty. I desperately want someone to take me away from here. I strive for commitment yet fear abandonment, so I treat people as disposable. I desire servitude. It is easier to cope with people leaving me when I consider it casual. If it hurts me, that merely proves that I am real and present, that I am still human, and that feels gratifying in its sick way. I have no one and nobody. No one who is as destructive and self-sabotaging as I am has people who want to remain around. I wish to harm people because inflicting pain is so empowering to me. Beneath all this anger and self-hatred lies a part of me that can still cry, something that can feel, and I am not entirely a beast. I drive people away, hearing them say goodbye. Self-sabotaging and reassuring myself that I cannot be accepted for the fiery hell I am, that this pain I carry is too immense, and yet it is all I possess. The only thing that has been able to stay with me. I break people, objects, and my life, then retreat back into my immense carelessness and apathy, only to shift to my next fixation. I have hurt many good people this way. I am selfish and greedy. I do not care what others have sacrificed in the past for me. I desire freedom and peace, yet I know I will always live like a slave, hand to mouth. I resent my family, and I resent the position I have been placed in, working like a laborer, never allowed to take for myself. I do not care if they fell into poverty, but if they do, then so do I, and then my own life is threatened, and I do not want that. I do not work very much. I do not even work very hard. But every single moment of every single day, I bear the mental burden that none of the money I make is truly mine, and I also lack the freedom to stop working. Otherwise, debt and poverty would pursue me relentlessly. All the bills, groceries, cost of living, all my responsibility. Forever. I would trample people if not for fear of retaliation or having my actions exposed. The only thing I do every day is attempt to dissociate and engage in other foolish, meaningless, futile activities to forget that I must live as myself. I want to escape, but I have no money to my name, no resources, and no one. My life is comfortable. I do not have to pay rent, which is something I frankly never want to do and is the main reason I would never undertake something foolish like running away. I have never experienced the pain of housing insecurity. I can only imagine the dreadful, excruciating anxiety that comes with never knowing if the roof over your head will suddenly vanish. I am grateful that the place I live in is secure, but it is still a cage. A cage of commitment to my family for decades to come, never moving, never growing. Losing more and more of myself to maintain the household. All these fleeting things I have purchased and all these foods I have acquired do nothing to diminish my loneliness. How trapped I am. It is not enough. I am not enough. I do not express my thoughts because they do not deserve my vitriol and they have sacrificed so much more for me to even be in a position to complain. I am spoiled and privileged to even have the space to feel these things. I do not respect my father at all, a terrible and horrible thing to admit. His displays of violence, poor emotional intelligence, absence, and irrational and extreme behaviors have made him someone I hate. I detest him for the person he is, but I also love him for the father he once was and strives to be. I know that deep inside he too is starved for connection, suffering from severe wartime trauma, loneliness, and pain. He has witnessed true atrocities from a terrible time in history. Atrocities that my first world feelings cannot even compare to. And yet, I cannot help but despise the person he has become to survive. Like two lost dogs just waiting to die, I hate that I see his behaviors and beliefs that directly conflict with mine, many of mine stemming from my refusal to become someone who lives like him. And yet, he is kind, generous, and a good person, exceedingly so. Still, I hate him. How twisted is it that imagining a life where I have elements of peace and independence is one where my parents are deceased. But to reach that point, I must care for them for decades alone, hoping to maintain the current roof over my head. I do not wish to be bound like this. But I am a failure, broke, and without success, leaving me with no choice. I wish to die but not to commit suicide. I am too cowardly, too afraid of the pain or some disastrous failure that leaves me in a state worse than what I experience now. Is the thought of having absolutely no active consciousness as the person I am now, even though physically I am severely disabled, more appealing? No, certainly not. But the idea of an instant, painless, unprocessable vaporization of the self is a comforting thought. I despise myself. I detest myself for what I have had to do to survive up until this point. I loathe myself for who I have become just to drag myself through each day barely living. I know everything there is to know about myself, why I am the way I am. I understand why I have these thoughts, why I hold these beliefs about myself, and everything that has shaped me to be this way. I have condemned myself to an existence that crashes like a violent wave against me, pulling me under every day. I know that life is worth living, worth enduring all this agony I am experiencing, worth surviving all the trauma and fear I bear in this vessel. I am weary, I am battered. I am on the edge just as I have been for the past 10 years, unchanging. But somewhere I am desperate to be proven that it is worth it. I keep crawling, my true inner self, crawling and crawling in the darkness and all alone, hoping to find a light at the end of the tunnel someday. But I am lost and hopeless, and facing low prospects, I will never succeed. The parts of my family that have succeeded have completely become independent, keeping all their money for themselves and leaving me with the responsibility to cover what remains. They are building their own lives, unshackled by the duties forced upon me. I agreed to this situation out of necessity to survive, but I did not anticipate having to live like this perpetually. I do not want to live like this anymore. I am falling apart from the inside, growing more and more resentful and hateful than I already am. I want to hurt those who will never comprehend what I have endured to keep food on the table and the lights on. I pay for things they ought to be contributing toward, merely so they can continue building their nest egg, their future, at the expense of my loss. But if I confront them, they will simply resort to physical violence. They will never be bound by the obligations to which I will be held. They are not expected to. They will not care for the household the way I know I will be expected to in a few short years. But I do not want that. I have never wanted that. I long to run away and be free alone. I harbor so much anger, hatred, bitterness, loneliness, anxiety, grief, fear, humiliation, shame, entitlement, selfishness, apathy, and sadism within me that it consumes me every day. I am so alone. I am just another loser. I will never be able to embody the functional dream of being a person with a place in society. I deserve this miserable fate. I will live and die like a dog just as I should. Story 4. I had an emotional affair while married to John after years of his cheating. He only kept me around for financial support, he told his next fling. Now I'm happy with Lucas and finally choosing myself. He deserved more pain than what I inflicted. How did it come to this? On a throwaway account, I simply want a neutral space. I had an emotional affair while I was married to my ex-husband, and I do not feel remorse about it now at all. Mention of sexual content. At that time, I 28 years old female and my husband, whom we will refer to as John 32 years old male, were married for not even a year after dating for 8 years. About 4 years into our relationship, I discovered that he had cheated on me and I made the decision to stay and see if we could make it work. We attended couples therapy, I participated in individual therapy, and he appeared genuinely remorseful. Things significantly improved to the point where I felt comfortable marrying him. We purchased a house, got dogs, developed our own hobbies, and maintained separate friend circles. Everything appeared to be great. One day, our dog rummaged through the trash in the yard, and as I cleaned it up, I found used condoms scattered around despite the fact that we did not use condoms. This led to a huge explosive fight. He claimed he had used them to masturbate because it was cleaner, and being foolish, I believed him. Life continued. I explained that he did not need to hide them in the trash because I did not mind if he masturbated. He asserted that he only did it because he was embarrassed and expressed understanding that he would not do it again. Life continued, and after more therapy, things seemed to calm down. Then in 2022, I took his car to go to the gym because mine was in the garage. I opened the middle console to retrieve some sunglasses and predictably found a box of condoms inside. To put it simply, this devastated me. Following our last argument about it, which had occurred at least a year earlier, there was no justification for him to have condoms in his car or to hide them in Magic, the Gathering card deck boxes. To me, the reason was clear. He pleaded and begged, and I cannot explain what happened to me. I did not trust him at all, and I am unsure whether I even cared about what he was doing anymore at that time, yet I still stayed. I do not know why. Perhaps I felt that I was too invested in the relationship after spending so many years in it and being married. I think I began to dissociate. I suppressed my emotions, started drinking excessively, gained weight, and allowed hobbies, shows, and social media to consume me. I did not realize how dire my situation was for months. Then I reconnected with an old online friend. I used to spend a significant amount of time on DeviantArt during my teenage years, particularly in the chat rooms, and some of those friendships transitioned to Skype. Every year or two, I would check in with my friends, and we would play games or whatever. I was feeling nostalgic that day while browsing through my old contacts. I noticed one friend had left me a message about 2 years prior, expressing hope that I was doing well, so I decided to reach out and responded. He replied within minutes and we began to catch up. We will refer to him as Lucas. I had a crush on Lucas many years ago when we were around 18 years old, but while I was with John, those feelings were completely absent during our conversations. However, this time it turned into something different. I confided in Lucas about my struggles and it felt as effortless as breathing to lean on him. Before long, I began to feel confused about my feelings for him. Confused and then filled with sheer panic. I shared my feelings with my best friends, who said it was natural to develop crushes occasionally. I insisted that it did not feel like just a crush as all those feelings from our teenage years rushed back to me at once. I attempted to put a stop to it for a while after discussing it with John and Lucas, keeping everyone informed about what was happening because I valued honesty above nearly all else. John was distraught, which I thought was understandable at the time, and Lucas was respectful of my wishes and always eager to be my friend. This, admittedly, made me like him more. To make a long story short, John became intensely possessive and monitored everything I did. For the record, I did not do this to him after he cheated on me. Initially, it was manageable, but eventually I began to feel suffocated by everything happening. Therefore, I decided to spend some time at my father's house, which was 6 hours away, and choose to have no contact for about 2 weeks to allow myself to relax and think clearly without constant scrutiny. I continued to communicate with Lucas because he felt safe. The longer I was home, the more erratic John became. He messaged my best friends incessantly, continually violated my no-contact boundary, and even created a love altar while I was away. He took pictures of it and sent them to my best friend, who became concerned about my well-being upon my return. These actions solidified my decision to leave John. When I came back, I informed him that I was moving out after securing an apartment nearby while I was gone. I moved out and subsequently started dating Lucas. We are still very happy together. I did feel remorse for the hurt I inflicted on John, but for once in my life I chose myself first. However, I still felt guilty for several months afterward, hoping he was doing okay. That was until I started receiving information about the relationship from others. I felt that I never acquired full closure regarding the first time I discovered he had cheated, so I reached out to the girl involved, clarifying that I did not wish to start anything. I merely wanted details about what truly happened because I felt I had never been given the whole truth. Boy, was I correct about that. John was unapologetic, secretive, and spoke negatively about me to garner pity from her, convincing her that he deserved better, which naturally led her to want to be the one to provide it. He sent her lingerie as an apology for not leaving me yet, and told her he only kept me around because I needed him for financial support, which I did not. He had no intention of leaving me and had no desire to inform me about her. Thus, she was the one who ultimately disclosed everything to me because she had reached her limit at that time and wanted everything out in the open. There is much more to this story, but I have already written a lot. Learning the details made me feel better and less guilty for John after discovering how manipulative he had been. Then another girl messaged me, apologizing for thinking I was an awful person. I had not spoken to this girl and had never met her in person. I only knew we had some mutual friends due to our geographic area. As the conversation progressed after I asked her to clarify, I found out that he cheated on me with her. She also mentioned something like, and when I cut him off, he continued the cycle with a new girl, and hinted that he had been doing this on and off for the 9 whole years we were together. After all that, I couldn't help but laugh. He was dating a new girl before I even started dating Lucas. He moved her in long before Lucas moved in with me. While it might make me a terrible person for having an emotional affair, honestly, after all this and even more that I will not disclose in one post, unless others inquire, I believe he deserved far more pain than what I inflicted upon him. I do not feel guilty about it at all anymore. He goes around telling everyone that I cheated on him to gain sympathy, and honestly, I do not even defend myself anymore. I simply state, he deserved more than what he received for how many years and how many women he cheated on me with, apparently. It feels good to have a space to express all this, and if you're still reading, thank you for sticking with it for this long. Lucas and I will be eloping this year in October, and my mental health has never been better.